Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fabulous. Yeah, I'm live. I'm checking. Welcome to the Fabulous Four. Hope everybody's having a great Saturday morning. It is raining in LA, and I am here with three dogs. I got two of them in my lap and one next to me, so I'm sure you'll see a head poking in and out throughout this live stream. So today we are going to be discussing the Arabian Nights, Stalker, Blood on the Tracks, and this big old hefty tune called Monsters. So, which one am I going to start with? I'm not sure. I guess I'm going to start with this one because probably this will be the least participated in. So, this is Blood on the Fields by Wynton Marsalis, which is a 3 CD set. And it actually won the Pulitzer Prize the year that it came out. So I think that's why I bought it initially. I was going through the Pulitzer Prize winners. The strange thing is that a lot of the recordings that win the Pulitzer Prize, they're actually not available in a physical format, which is, kind of strange. You would think that because they're... Good morning, Martin. All right, I'm going to click it. There you go. So you would think that because they win the Pulitzer Prize, that someone would want to put them out on a physical format, at least in, the 90s or the thousands, the 2000s. But this just isn't the case. A lot of the recordings that won the Pulitzer Prize, they're still not available in a physical format. Now, this was the first time a jazz recording had won the Pulitzer Prize for music. Yeah, I jump in right when it starts. So sorry, Sleepy. Yeah, since I say starts at 10, I get here a little bit early and then I just jump right in. No, you didn't miss anything. I'm just introducing Blood on the Fields and why I picked it. So again, this is the first time a jazz music composition won the Pulitzer Prize for music. And since then, they've opened it up, and even a rap album, or I think 2 rap albums now, have won the Pulitzer Prize for music. But anyway, so this is Blood on the Fields. It's a 3 CD set, and I'd never heard it before, although I've had it for so long. Good morning, Gore. How are you? Gore, the last thing that I did last night before sleep was watch your video on monsters. I was watching like this. I was so tired. My eyes were opening and closing, not because your video was boring, but I was just tired. Oh, by the way, if any of you want to jump in and say hi, let me go ahead and put the invite code. I'm going to put copy. Done. I saw that. And you know what? This is a funny comment, because you know what happened? I forgot to say that if you watched Roadhouse, the new one, you have to watch the post-credit scene, because that's where you get more butt. So you can't just stop it at the end of the movie, because there's a crucial scene after the credits that you have to see. Hey, Larry, you haven't missed anything. I was just introducing Blood on the Fields because I figured of the 4 that probably this one was participated in the least. Now, what I'm going to say is I listened to this over and over and over again, and I basically used it as background music while I was reading. Let's see what. Lucky I checked, and now you guys started daylight savings 3 weeks before us. Whoa, that's weird that it's different in different countries. You would think that would be something that's universal, but I guess not. May join you to talk about monsters if you like. Absolutely. I love it. I thought it was in an hour. Oh, sorry, Morton. I'm glad you figured it out that, our system rules and that you get caught up with us. So good job. See, you survived near mint. Yeah. I'll pop in when you get the monster. Larry, I'd love to hear how you feel about being on a live stream, because I've been on a couple of live streams myself, being invited. And when I say a couple, I mean like a couple. And it is a kind of nerve-wracking feeling, right? It's just it's strange because I'm more comfortable now. This is, I think, the third time or fourth time that I'm doing this, so I'm a little bit more comfortable now. But when you go into someone else's live stream, it's a whole other thing, right? Because there's so many variables that you can't control. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts later. And yeah, so if anybody listened to this, I would love to hear your comments. I love this. Like I said, I used it as background music. There is a story to it. It's actually not considered an opera. I believe it's considered an oratorio. And from what I could gather, an oratorio is basically a performed piece of music that has a story, right? It's not like they act it out like a stage drama. They just get up there and they kind of like stand and sing it. I think that's what it's, and the whole chorus is there, and it's like it's performed live, but it's just not acted out. I guess that's what an oratorio is. So this is considered not an opera, but an oratorio. And it does have a story. It's about slavery, and it's also a love story. I actually didn't focus on the lyrics. I listened to it. It's three discs, and it's over 3 hours long. And so I didn't like micro get into this by like listening to it and listening to the lyrics and all that stuff. But there were really, really good moments in this. And there were so many standout songs that you could put into a playlist, I think. This was really, really enjoyable. I also want to show the interior art, because if you look it up, that's the art that you're going to see, which is this one, Blood on the Fields. All right. So I guess, let's see. Yeah, nobody listened to that one. That's okay. I really enjoyed it, and I highly, highly recommend this, Wynton Marsalis. And in fact, because of this, I started listening to other works by Wynton Marsalis, and I was really getting into his work. So he's somebody that I'm going to be continuing to check out more. Okay, we've got a bunch of key people here for Monster. I don't know if I should just go ahead and let you guys off the hook and do Monster first, in case you need to leave. Should we go ahead and do Monster? I was going to do Stalker next, but maybe since everybody's here, Monster. Ugh, Monster. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put the link in case somebody wants to join. Let me go ahead and do that. Oh, wait, it's up here. I wonder if I could just copy and paste it. No, I'm not going to do that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy it. I'm going to paste it. And there you go. There is the link if anybody wants to join. I think most of you want to join for Monster. So until people show up, this is Monsters, not Monster, and by Barry Windsor Smith. So I'm going to go ahead and add Larry and let him chat about it. And then if anybody else wants to join in, please do. Larry, I didn't add you. Oh, wait, hold on. I have to learn how to do it. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
So go on Monsters.
Go on. Okay.
Were you able to finish it?
One. Oh, yeah. It's been about a week or so ago, I think. But yeah, I love the art, of course. Barry Smith's art, fantastic. And I thought it was really well told. I think it could have benefited from color, but I prefer color. And there was a few times, especially in the beginning, where I wasn't sure, which character was which. When the three guys were talking for a long time, I got confused a few times, and I think color would have helped fix that.
I have that same problem with Walking Dead initially. The characters were all drawn in black and white, and I was having trouble distinguishing them initially. I didn't have that problem later on.
Yeah.
Hi, Gore.
Hey, Gore.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Larry, nice to meet you. How are
Hey,
you?
nice to meet you. Pretty
Oh, you
good.
two never met? That's cool.
Well, not online, not here. And I think
Yeah.
hope you didn't mind me you ribbing you a little bit too much on your mint this week.
No, I loved it. That was great.
And
Yeah, I was a nervous wreck, really. I tried not to. I tried to hide it, but
hopefully they took your recommendations because I think you and I have similar interest in books, and I hope they did take your recommendations.
yeah, thanks.
Oh, good morning, David. Oh, hello, David. Good to see you, David.
Morning. So, did you want to add anything else, Larry, before Gore jumps in?
Oh yeah, there's so much going on with this one. First off, I think that it could have benefited with a trigger warning for the graphic the graphic violence and the even graphic rape. Really, more than one. And I guess it was supposed to shock us, and it certainly did shock me, But I don't know. I did not expect. I mean, he's a Nazi. The big bad was a Nazi, and we're used to seeing Nazis as bad guys, of course. But seeing him just brutally rape those other Nazi leaders and all that stuff, I mean, it was just. I'm not sure we needed to see it so graphically. What did you think about that? Either one of you. I mean,
I thought that character was over the top, and I was kind of like, wait, this is out of left field. Like, this is almost a caricature of what a monster is. So I don't know if that was his point. Like, he wanted to show humans as monsters. And this guy was a monster. And of course, he added in the part of him being gay and doing that, which also is for me kind of a, oh, here we go to that cliche where all gay people are like rapists. So I kind of didn't appreciate that, but I understood that he needed to go to like the depths of depravity to show these monsters, right? What humans were capable of. I guess that's what he was going for.
I mean, that worked, but I'm not sure it needed to be that overt. I don't know.
What do you think, Gore? Gay rape?
Yeah, for me, it wasn't an issue. It worked fine. And I think the reason is because there were many surprises in this book for me. And I remember for many years, and we had heard about this book, right? And we weren't sure it was ever going to be published. And we knew it was a hoax story that Marvel had rejected. And so Barry did his own thing. And then when it was announced it was going to be done by Fantagraphics, I was quite excited. Many of us were. Yeah. So, but I really didn't know what to expect. And so when we get to the part you guys are talking about, it's towards the end of the book.
Yeah.
But what's surprising about this book, so many surprises for me in a good way, storytelling, is the first, almost not half of the book, but almost a quarter of the book or so is about McFarlane, right? And it takes place in the 60s, and we get his story, and you're wondering, wait a minute, what's happening here? But you get these layers of story that's setting you up, right?
It's very clever and it's very intricate, right? I mean,
yeah. So by the time you get to the horrors of it, you've already seen quite a bit. You've already seen the emotional landscape of this book. You know where this is taking you. All of us here are familiar with what happened in the camps, Mengele, and all the experiment on the twins, and the horrifying nature of what happened there. And regarding the Nazis, we already know this. So we get a taste of it, the first couple of pages, and then we don't hear about it again. But it's already a prelude, and this idea, and I think I mentioned in my comment to that you saw my video. This is certainly one of the saddest stories I've ever read.
It's pretty brutal.
In any way, in any capacity, in novels, films, and etc. And I read this book over 2 days. When it arrived, I began to read that night at night and finished it the next. And it's a deeply moving work. And the horrors that happened in the book, I thought, worked. And but anyway, I'll stop there. But yes, it was really, really affecting to me when I read it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So go ahead, Larry.
I'm sorry. I don't want to give a spoiler to the ending, but I wish the ending would have been a little bit more less ambiguous. I mean, it was pretty. You know what I mean? And it was drawn beautifully, but I'm still like, well, what exactly happened? And I mean, a lot of people probably like an ending like that because it leaves a lot open to your interpretation. But I was kind of a little let down. I was like, oh wow, what happened? I mean, were they in heaven? I mean, I don't want to give it away, but
Right, I understand.
A lot of this book seemed like a mishmash of other things. For example, I saw The Shining throughout this because we've got that character who has the sight, right? And we have Hulk, and we've got Frankenstein, and we just see this mishmash of all these other works, and I don't think he pulled that off to the best effect. I think the strong point of this is the art. I actually felt that this could have been shaved by about 50 pages to make a much tighter work. I felt the part with the love story in the past with the I don't even know what he was. He was like ex-army, or he was a cop, or he was a colonel, and then he wasn't, and then it was going on and on and on and on. And I thought that could have been trimmed, and I got the idea after a couple pages, but it just kept going on and on and on. And I felt
like he was like a sheriff, but then he was undercover fed, and then he was a governor.
It didn't seem believable that like he was a pretend sheriff and then he became the sheriff or a deputy or something. His character was just all over the place.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I thought it worked wonderfully well, and it's interesting because the story of his mother is in the middle of the book, which basically is at the heart of the book.
And I was really sorry.
Yes, no, yes. What were you going to say?
I was really impressed with his the dialogue and the dialects. For especially what I'm thinking, Barry Smith's not even. I mean, he's an Englishman. I guess he's been living in the U.S. for a while. I don't know, but he mastered all those different dialects. American, slang and dialects from different decades and different parts of the country, and I thought that was pretty impressive. It all seemed real to me. It didn't seem fake.
No, for me, I see all these things missed perfectly. And the transition, how he would go from the past from the present to the past, and then how he's basically incorporating the story of the mother, and how that just fleshes in, and also how she begins to write her letters, keep her journal, right? But she's not a reliable narrator. She's trying to cover up what is really happening in the story. The reader gets it, but I think it's brilliant how he did this. And there's some beautiful panels in this story. And the video that I made about it, I highlighted it.
Art is stunning.
It's stunning how he captures the movement between Janet and Powell, and how basically she's being tempted. I mean, she's in love. I mean, she might be in love with him. He's in love with her. And in this, you mentioned the writing. If there was any question about his writing ability, it's clear here. I mean, all the years that I've been reading him, I mean, I know he's written stuff, but this is the one that he is an excellent writer, and he captures. That's why this movie was so moving to me, because you see it from Bobby's point of view, you see it from her point of view. You can feel for the father, whatever he went through over there, and Powell and everyone in there. And the transition from it is just so, not that perfect, but it's just beautiful. And it's my opinion that this is a modern masterpiece in the graphic novel form. And I was thinking about it. You were going to do this today, and I was reading parts of it again, mainly her letters and such, and just looking at the panels. And it's a devastating work, And but I like these kind of stories anyway. But even this one, it's something else.
Yeah, I think if this would have, I don't know how it could have been a Hulk story. I mean, he had to have. I mean, 50% of this would have had to be jettisoned easily, right? I mean, there's no way that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, this was actually. I wonder if was it Peter David who actually went on and used the ideas of this.
Bill Mantlo. Bill Mantlo.
Yeah, Bill Mantlo, I think.
It was him who did it.
Oh, and who used the idea of the father being an abuser and him splitting his personality and the child, going.
Bill Mantlo did expand, or Peter David did expand on that quite a bit in his run, though. He showed a lot of back.
I wonder how much of that idea was actually just stolen from this, right? Because he probably
that's a theory. That's a big theory.
Yeah, I mean.
It's my understanding that because he did an interview, Barry Windsor Smith did an interview that I think he submitted some artwork to Marvel with the story, and I don't remember what it was that it was rejected, but I think they had some of the work, and I think he believed that Mantlo or someone saw the stories, saw the layout or whatever, and maybe got the idea. Right, and got the idea to do this, and I've read that issue. I mean, it's a much more comic book sort of. Let me put it this way: not comic book, but it's much more for kids. Yeah, it's not as serious. But I think is when he proposed this. I mean, I don't know, Larry. Do you know what was this? Was this before Watchmen or after Watchmen? Was this after Dark Knight when he proposed this to Marvel?
I don't know. That might be in the introduction.
I'm not sure. I'm thinking it'd be before, but I'm not 100% sure.
The reason I think it was before, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is this is before Marvel and DC went in this direction in storytelling. And I'm wondering if you
realism.
Right. If you post this after these books, these more quote unquote mature books, I wonder if Marvel would have said, let's try this. But this is before. I mean, are we going to go there? Are we really going to go there with a Bruce Banner story? This dark way of doing things. Maybe they weren't ready for it. Well, obviously they were not ready for it. But I wonder if they would have been ready for it if it had been proposed after all these books saying, "Hey, the public likes this, so let's try it."
Can we talk about the scene where the mother hits the child?
Yeah.
Now, from a point of view of I believe she did that because she figured if she beat the child, it would save the beating from the father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess so. It was really.
It didn't go well with me. That didn't seem like she's too much of a protector, and it seems like her role, like she's pretty much innocent throughout this entire story. She's accused of being all these things throughout the story, and then from that point on, she starts to really take an interest in him. I don't like the way that her character shifted, and it seemed like that wasn't in her character to beat that child.
I didn't like that at all. But I mean, I'm sure we weren't supposed to like it, but that was really rough, and it was a big shift to see her do that. But.
No, I thought it was in her character, and I think it alludes to what you said, David.
He was a protector, though.
But the protector, yeah, that's right, because we had seen what he's capable of. But also, I think we've all known people who have been in abusive relationships. I know I do. Domestic relationships. I know people presently now. And sometimes when I interact with them, the women in particular, is that they seem to transfer this, meaning they don't discuss their problems, but they transfer their issues to others. And what I saw also here with her doing this, she can't talk back to her husband. She did once strike him, when he literally killed the kid. But she's terrified of him. So it's easy, basically is when you're the victim, but now you're victimizing somebody else. You're transferring this to somebody else, and you're doing this. So I think two things are playing here. One, protecting him, but also she can't do this to her husband, but she does this to her child. And we've heard this, right? The cycle, right? The cycle of violence that occurs in domestic violence, and that's why I doubt it was upsetting to see this, but I thought it was realistic to see this, and that's why I like what he did here in this storyline. What Barry did here, he didn't. I think he rounded some of the main characters in a way which I thought were believable, in the sense that you don't have to really like everything that they do. Just like if anyone knew any one of us three here, they wouldn't like anything that we did. But I think we all think we're good people. But I think if they see some sides of us, they're going to thinking, "Oh, he did that." But is that going to change your opinion about us? I would hope not, right? But it's realistic. So I thought it worked fine.
I thought it was really.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought it was a really hard read, and I don't mean to get through. I mean, I did it in about 3 days, but I mean, just the material, just the power of the horrible things, and it was tough. I wanted to read it again. Maybe I would think differently, but I don't want to read it again anytime soon. That way. Yeah.
It's interesting. You have Tarkovsky in this one because you have Stalker. Larry, have you seen Stalker?
I haven't seen it.
Okay, because without giving away the ending to our book here, right? In Stalker, you have this zone. We'll get there in a moment, but it's a zone where your wishes that you enter this zone, and your deepest wish will be granted. And in our story, you have characters who have a deep wish of the way things should be, but it has to come from the heart. It has to be something sincere. And I was thinking about this, and I don't know because thematically, in a way, these books are not thematically, but they do have something in common. The movie Stalker and this book here, especially how this turns out, and especially the ending of the Monsters book, and in the film Stalker about the purpose of the zone. So it just got me thinking, last night about all these things, and in a good way, but got me thinking.
I didn't have any sympathy for the father, even after we seen what he's seen. I still could not really have any sympathy for him. Could you? Either of you?
David?
I'm sorry. What did you say?
I say I couldn't really get any sympathy for the father, even after we seen what caused him to break.
Yeah.
I still didn't really have any sympathy for him. It was just, I guess, it was too much.
One weakness in the story. That is correct. I agree with that. That is the one weakness in the development of his character. Is that
I thought it was just because he was possessed. He went into that room, and he immediately started hearing voices, and those voices took over his personality. So to me, he wasn't even present. Like it's like a horror movie trope of almost possession.
Yeah.
And so as a character, once I learned that, I realized, well, he's not acting under his own volition. Now, of course, you could interpret that as trauma, right?
Yeah.
Because
I wonder which one he meant. The literal experiences.
Yeah. They tend to dissociate, and they tend to withdraw, and then they lash out because they have no way of dealing with this trauma, right? And especially at that time when the country didn't even consider PTSD a real thing, right? But for me, when it's outlined in there, it's like he was possessed by all these voices and all these, Nazi spirits who were, controlling him, and he's trying to fight that. But that's how I interpret it. Also, I'm also going to say that there's the monster isn't really built up either. From the boy after he loses his eye, I guess, until we see him in go to the recruitment office, and even after, his character isn't even built up. It's like he's not even important to the story. He's just what the
he was
story
stunted, wasn't he?
Around.
Wasn't he stunted emotionally because of all the stuff he'd already been through? I mean, he couldn't progress.
Yes, but his character is not really explored. He just becomes this Hulk that, roams around, and, other people are reacting to him. But we've all read the Hulk stories, and we know what sympathy that the writers can create for Hulk in all these situations where everybody's hounding him and he's seen as a monster. But that never really came across to me in this book. maybe he was saying, hey, you know, that's already been done. I don't need to do that. But if this is to stand on its own merit, the character, the central character of this whole drama is not really, you know, fleshed out.
Right, you know, but I think it's plural, right? It's monsters.
Yeah,
And,
I'm not saying he's the monster. He's not.
right.
That's
And so,
obvious from the title.
yeah, and a sense that, and I think that's why maybe we don't see that so much about him. But for me, I think to Larry's point is before his father comes home, this is why it makes it such a tragic story. Is that little boy, the happiest moments in his life were just about 8 years. Well, not even less than that, because I don't know how much memory you have when you're 1 or 2 years old. But let's say your memory begins when you're 2 or 3 years old. And then by the time you're 8, he's happy with his mom. He's happy enjoying it. And so then his father comes home. He's domestically, you know, abused. And then when he joins the military, his own government abuses him, takes advantage of him, and uses him in this way. And in a way, the little boy is like a symbol, you know, for all the things we do to each other as human beings. And the mother is loving kindness, the antithesis of that, but we're also capable of, you know. And then we see Powell's character, a man whose conscience is torn because he could have done something. But we've all been in those situations, you know. We have a certain threshold. Are we going to cross there and do something about something? What stops us from doing that? And then when something bad happens, we live with that. And of course, he's compromised because he's in love with her. And I think he does that quite well in the story. How he does this is how he doesn't, you know, he respects that threshold with her, with a married woman. And, but anyway, those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah. So the strengths, we haven't really discussed the strength of this, and it's got to be the art. Yeah. The art in this, and like you said, even the part that I felt was overlong, there were still so many beautiful panels. And when we get to the letters, my eyes would linger on the side of a teacup on a doily with a pen cap there.
The pen cap, yeah.
And I would stare at the intricate pattern on the doily thing where the teacup goes on, because I thought to myself, you know, he had to sit there and draw every one of those lines. It's like when you do those Zentangles.
For the viewers there, get an idea.
Yeah, the art is so good. His one weakness is faces. He does have the same kind of faces over and over. Yeah. But once you get used to that, you can forgive him, because not everyone is strong at everything. Yeah. But the line work in this is gorgeous. Open up the first panel on the first page, and you're going to see, like,
bingo.
Just look at that. It draws you right into the world of, you know, an American backyard in the 60s, right? And it's gorgeous. And then you're drawn into this, and then bam, you're brought right into the violence with this dark panel all the way at the end with the little boy's face bruised and battered, right? And this guy looking like the Hulk, like a monster. Like, look at the look on his face. And yeah, the first panel just brings you right into it. You've got, you know, the light and the dark right there on the first panel. Mm-hmm. The art is brilliant in this. It's really good.
There's no better art to be had. I mean,
the beauty of the comic medium is that, I mean, because in a film, you see these panels, you watch in a movie, the scene just goes. Now, there could be wonderful scenes, but it just goes like that. And the beauty of the medium or comics, those of us, you know, who appreciate the medium, is you pause on those panels and you absorb them. And when you have a master in the form like Barry Windsor Smith is, when you see the face and you see the eyes, you see the curling of the lips, you see the tears, you see the rainfall, you know, the exquisiteness of it all, you absorb it. Like you watch a painting at a museum. It's exactly what it is. You watch the painting in a museum.
Yeah.
And it's one of the frustrations, many people that I know, you know, I'm sure, who just look down on the comic medium as something that's not even worth even contemplating.
Yeah, and look what they're missing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't get to mine. What sort of blurb about the content is on the back there? Can you one of you guys look? I know
Yeah,
it
it goes
mature.
right into the story and some review. It doesn't say anything about the origin of it, like really.
No, I meant the content as far as the being a trigger warning at all. Is there?
Oh, I guess they would assume that this is adult content, but I don't think so.
I think maybe in the lower right, maybe. I think there's something there.
All you have here is the Fantagraphics logo, and my disturbing little stain there. And this one, you mean?
Yeah.
There's no trigger warning.
No, there's nothing there really.
Material.
But I think if you see the word Nazi in World War II and the camps, I think that's probably the warning at this point. It's like mouse, right? If you're going to read mouse, it's about cats and mice, but you see that it's going to be.
I'm just trying to imagine someone that has been a victim of that in reality.
Yeah,
maybe could have needed a little heads up. I don't know.
Oh, see, I wouldn't have liked that because that would have revealed more of the story that I want. That's the thing. For me, I have
kind of the problem, isn't it? I mean, but what do you do?
Oh, let me read this. It does say. There are passages of heartbreaking tenderness, of excruciating pain, of redemption and sacrificing, and devastating violence. Monsters are surely one of the most intense graphic novels ever drawn. Mm-hmm. So that is put like there, like intense violence. So I guess that's the only trigger warning you're going to get.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, but again, it's a very powerful book, and it's one of my favorite graphic novels. And you spent 30 years getting this done, or so. In a way, it would have been interesting if Marvel would have done this, but I just could imagine the backlash that would have been on this.
It would have been tamed.
It would have been tough, right?
No,
it would have been gutted a lot.
There wouldn't have been there wouldn't have been the rape scenes. I don't think there would have been the scene, which I thought was an effective scene with the wife on the table while everyone's watching. That wouldn't have been in the comic, right? No. I think there would at that time those kind of scenes wouldn't have been in a Hulk story. No. So I think it would have been a lot tamer, right? In that sense.
Yes, it would have.
But I mean, the core idea of this, I think, was all used later. Like this whole story was actually used, all the same ideas.
I think at the core was, but I think what happened was once he knew he couldn't do this, maybe all those things we just talked about, we talked about is that you couldn't see in the comic. He thought, okay, it's my own book. I can do whatever I want, so I can incorporate those more disturbing scenes. So he probably just.
Well, I don't think we would have had all the stuff with the African American family. I think that entire plot line probably wouldn't have been part of the whole.
You're right. That would have been
that was a powerful part of it.
Yeah, it's like 60, 70 pages of that. That's like 2 issues.
Yeah, it's some of the best part, really. I mean, that guy's a hero.
So well done. Yeah, McFarlane.
Yeah,
and I like how all these tie in. Right, his father had been killed. In the war. But all this, much of it is destiny here. Fate and destiny play into this. Characters, how they all circle around, and how the little boy sees this beautiful woman on the bus, and then later on, right, she's like an angel. But then when she's on the bus going home after that encounter with him, it goes back to that, how he does that for the little boy.
I didn't expect it. I didn't expect that at all. Did you? I mean that.
Yeah. No, I didn't expect it at all, but I found it beautiful when it happened because you're going, wait a minute, this is what he's doing. How he's connecting this to that. And I thought it was just, that's why there's many, I reread it again after I read it the first time, and I started seeing those connections. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant how he did this.
A lot of moving parts. It's impressive that he kept it together as well as he did,
Yeah, as well as he did, because it is a complex story. but it takes a master artist to just do this. And again, now he's a damn good writer.
Yeah.
It's so Sleep says it's Barry with absolutely zero editorial control. I think the artist is the raw. I disagree to a little bit of extent. I think he could have used with a good editor in this book. I think it could have been shaved and it would have been so much better. It's amazing. I'm not saying it isn't, but I did feel that some of the ideas were repeated over and over again. But
and I think some color, not bright color and not a lot of color, but some color would have helped some of the storytelling work better for me. Telling the different characters apart, you know.
Yeah.
So
however, having said what I said, if you're someone who really enjoys looking at the art in this, having all of that spread out, you really have a feast for the eyes, right? Whereas the writing could have been a little bit tamed, like chiseled down. We still get all those extra pages of beautiful art, and you can't argue with that, right? So it's
Great.
6 of one, half dozen of the other. Yeah. So Sleepy says he loves the black and white look of the art. Yeah. The black and white is beautiful, but I do agree with Larry. There were a couple of times when I was like, wait, which character is that? Which male character? Because there were a couple scenes where there would be 3 people in one panel, and I wasn't sure which character was speaking. Oh, and I also had a little bit of trouble following the line of dialogue. A couple of times we're used to going top to bottom.
Yeah.
But
I was hoping you'd point that out.
Across and then up, and I had to get used to that. It was a change. Did any of you notice
there was one page? There was one page early on. I wish I had wrote down what number, but where he actually messes up on the balloons, and he has the line drawn to the wrong person, and I had to reread that section like 4 times because the bubble is actually pointing to like Powell, and it's supposed to be like the general or something.
Okay.
Yeah, that happens at least once.
It was a little bit, but the thing is, you know, the one who's more notorious for this, Howard Chaykin. Howard Chaykin's bubbles in American Flag and all those books kind of like already, nothing trained me for this because his are the toughest ones to follow.
Yeah.
Right. And so this one, was a little bit, but, you know, I've already been quote unquote corrupted by him.
It reminded me of Chaykin a little bit here and there, you know.
Yeah. So that's why I wasn't too bothered by it. But you're right. You had to, you know, some of them you had to reread.
I had to get used to that. I was like, wait.
Get used to it.
I didn't read it.
You're not gonna have fun with Howard.
It's out of order. It was strange, because they would even be connected. Like all the bubbles were connected, like touching each other. And I would still want to go to the top and read that instead of continuing. So it was a little bit of a shift when I was reading this.
I know when I got to the part of the mom and the writing, you have the letters, and then you have the story, right? The letters and the story. I remember what I did first. I want to say I read the story first, and then I read the letters. So I didn't go back and forth. And I learned this from when I was reading Cerebus in Jaka's story. Jaka's story is a major storyline in Cerebus, and there's a lot, and Dave Sim does that. There's like a lot of letters, a lot of narrative,
a lot of text,
narrative story. And so I decided when I got to this part that I found that it was because I was going back and forth, and I tried to do that with Cerebus and comics to do that. It wasn't effective. So I just read one part and then the other, and I thought it worked quite well. At least for me, it did.
Interesting.
So you would what would you do? You would skip the letters and like read the whole thing and then go back and read the letters at the end?
Yeah, you know, the chapter with the mom when she starts writing the letters. You know, you have the story of the little boy, the mom. I read those. And then when I saw it seemed like to have not ended. And then I went and I read the letters. And just the letters. And I saw that and then when I saw that, I'm thinking how she lied, how she's embellishing things, how she's changing things. Because now you look at the panels of the story thinking, oh, she changed this. yeah, Bobby had an accident. Bobby had an accident. No, he didn't have an accident. But she's
She's
writing
trying
this
to
in her head.
rationalize the horror of it, you know, and pretty it up a little bit or a lot. And yeah,
She always made excuses for her husband.
Yeah,
She
which is
covered up.
typical. I mean, people that I know in domestic violence, the women, they all do it. All the ones that I've
It's
known,
realistic.
they all do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, covering up.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah, it's
So, any final thoughts? I guess we're done with monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like Larry says, if you find some of this stuff disturbing, it's not going to be for you. It's going to be upsetting and all those things. And but since I swim in this sort of stories, they're fine with me. And
I think if you can handle it, it's worth it. So yeah.
I think well, here's what I would appreciate. I would like to have seen this ending of the story written back when he originally proposed it. I think he went way out there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Later, and
Yeah.
I don't think he really needed to. And I think it went into the realm of caricature, right? But if I would have liked to have seen all those scenes back when he first imagined them and what they would have been like.
God, just imagine.
I think they would have been. I just.
It would have been so radical at the time. It would have been something. Yeah, it would have been. It would have been something. That's for sure. But oh well. But at least he got this. At least he didn't give up on his idea.
Yeah.
And he gave us this. Again, my opinion. It's a modern. It's a modern masterpiece. I think. I know.
Okay, so Larry, this is my challenge for you. So let's each buy another copy of this, and we're going to go ahead and color it in, and then we're going to show off our colors. Who colored it better?
I can color.
It'd be like that lady that finished that painting, and it looked like a monkey. What was that from a few years ago? It was Jesus painting from it was ancient. And she finished it by hand.
I did not see that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I'll have to try to look that up. But
Gore,
it was all over the
you
news.
can buy a packet of crayons. You can color.
I cannot even do. I can not make a straight line with a ruler.
Well,
that's how bad I am. I'm not joking.
I think I could do it with Photoshop, but it would take forever.
I can't do it.
Yeah. So Sleepy's right. So Barry Windsor Smith had total control over this, and this is the work we got. And flaws or not, we're so happy that we have it. The art is beautiful.
Yes.
There were a couple of criticisms I made, Larry made, but yeah, we are grateful that we have this. And this is a major piece of writing that really does belong in the top echelon of graphic novels. Right, despite the criticisms I've made. I mean, this is an important piece of work, and it delves into dark themes, dark issues. But that's what storytelling's about sometimes, right? Yeah. It's not always the light. So yeah, we're lucky to have this. A woman in Spain who destroyed a medieval. I did not know. I gotta look.
Yeah, you can look that up. Look that up. Yeah,
monkey. Oh. I don't want to say Monkey Jesus, but is that what it turns out to be? Monkey Jesus? It's the cathedral restoration in Borja, Spain. Okay, I have to look this up.
Look that up. Look that up. She was trying to help, She actually meant well, but no one told her to do it. And, yeah.
All right. Okay, so we have two more items that we're going to discuss. So Gore,
let me interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
I have to go. I got to get to Kristen has a show. I got to watch some of that before she's off, and I will watch the rest of this on the replay. Okay.
Thank you so much, Larry.
Nice meeting you, Larry. Have a good day.
Thanks for having me, man. Good to meet you guys.
Wasn't even a good monkey. Oh my gosh. Bye. Windsor Smith's Monsters wins 2022 Eisner for Best New Graphic Novel. It deserves it, right?
Oh, it did win it. I didn't know that. I wasn't sure. I know I got nominated, but I never looked into it. Won. That's great.
It's pitiful and gets a big bless her heart. Okay, so do you want a break and come back for Stalker, or should we just jump into Stalker?
If you want to jump into Stalker, that's fine. Okay. I've only read a handful of the stories of the Arabian Nights.
Yeah, when I get to the Arabian Nights, I fell pretty short. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I
all
want to
right.
hear your thoughts on Tarkovsky. Yeah, I'm gonna
Okay, but first, go ahead and you start because I'm going to put the invite code.
Oh,
in
great.
case
Okay.
somebody else wants to join in. Sleepy's jumping in. Hold on, Sleepy. I'll get you in just a
Hey,
second.
Damien.
I'm pasting. I'm all slow here. I'm pasting.
You do fine. I don't know how you guys handle these live streams. I've always been impressed how people handle the live streams and the
There
chat.
you go. There you
Hey,
go.
Hey.
Welcome.
Good to see you, Damien.
I don't even know why I'm here except to be negative, I guess.
You're allowed to be negative, Sleepy.
You are not negative at all.
Wait, let's hear his comments. Go.
On the movie?
Well, or whatever you want to be negative about. Go ahead.
No, the movie I will be mostly negative about. Fantastic cinematography. That's my positive.
Yes.
It's beautiful movie.
But go ahead.
And quite a lot of bald leading men. I like that.
Facts.
Oh, that's true. Picard would have been good in this movie.
Exactly. Yeah.
He would. He would actually. He's got the nice profile. He would have been really good for this one.
Mm-hmm.
I think what bothers me most about this movie is the fact that so many critics say it's one of the best movies of all time.
That is true. They do
If
say
the
that.
critics said this is an interesting experiment, you might want to watch it. But when they say it's the best movie of all time, then I feel bad because I just struggled with it so much. It was so boring. I think a lot of the dialogue was nonsense. They say it's pure poetry and you just have to take it in. But some of it was interesting, some of the dialogue. And to have people declaiming while lying in puddles and things like that, it's just
So
kind
much
of
water!
the epitome
Radioactive water.
It's like a joke on an art movie almost.
Yeah, it's the
to me,
art
obviously, 100% of critics, according to Rotten Tomatoes, thought it was a masterpiece.
100. Interesting.
Yeah, I've never heard mention 100% on Rotten Tomatoes before.
Yeah,
you can't be a critic and say that this movie's boring. You'll lose your job.
You'll lose your credibility. Yeah.
That'd be the reason. Maybe they don't want to say that they really like it, but I mean that. Yeah, it's odd. Oh well.
I could understand a qualified "this is a great movie in a certain way" kind of thing, but it just So that's kind of where my negativity comes from, I think. Because since I'm still talking, because it's in Russian and you have to read the subtitles, you have to be really focused the whole time.
Yeah, you do.
It might be different if you were a native Russian speaker and you could let it wash over you a little differently than reading subtitles. I don't know.
Yep.
It'd be interesting to talk to a native Russian speaker about their experience with this movie.
Yeah. So I want to say that I agree with you. So I watched this movie once a couple years ago, and I was drunk when I watched it, and I was so bored. Like I put it on because I bought it. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch this, and I was like, what is this? I was so bored, but at the same time, I was appreciating the visuals, and I watched the whole thing because the visuals are stunning. They're gorgeous, and when he moves from black and white to color, and all these things, and I just kept thinking, man, there's so much water in this movie. Like their bedroom floor is covered in water, and I don't understand that. Like the opening shot, like why do they live in water? And when he gets out of the bed, he's in his socks. I'm like, his socks are gonna get wet. Like these are the ideas that are going. Those ideas aren't supposed to be in my mind, but it's the practicality of it. I'm like, why is there water everywhere? And they're not even in the zone. It's like water everywhere. And
it seems like the characters are just wearing wet clothes for days at a time.
So I like I said, I went into this with the idea of, okay, this is lauded as one of the greatest movies ever. Up there with Seven Samurai, which I think is a masterpiece. Gorgeous, right? It's up there with Seven Samurai. And so I approach it as like, why does everyone say this is one of the best movies ever made? Right? When we know it's very boring. It's tedious to get through. And the critics, there are special features on here where one of the critics goes into this. He's like, he was honest. He's like, the first couple times I watched this, I was like, oh my God, this is awful. This is boring. But he surrenders himself to the rhythm, to the poetry, and he has to approach it from a different angle.
Why did he watch it so many times?
Because he's a critic and he's forced to. He said he had to go to all these screenings and introduce the movie, and he would have to sit through it over and over again. And he said at a certain point, it just clicked. And he's like, now I can't get enough of it. He says, I sit and watch, and he says, because he goes to the screen, he's like, oh, I'll just watch to the point where they go to the, get on the little train. Oh, I'll just watch it. And he's like, I can't stop watching it. I cannot stop. And so it was really interesting. Again, like with A Hard Day's Night, I really enjoy the special features of these movies because they give insight into other people's experiences with these, art pieces. And I got his view, which is very much like mine initially. And I get to see it from a different point of view, but I do have a problem when people say like this is the greatest or one of the greatest movies ever made, and they don't qualify it with like this is 100% an experimental art film. Like you need to be in a state of mind where you're going, if you like poetry a lot and long pieces of classical music, then you're going to thoroughly enjoy this. You have to be in the right state of mind to watch this. Okay, I'm done. Go, Gore. Because I know we bashed on this movie, but there's a lot of great things to say about
Maybe
this.
Gore will have a different insight.
Go, Gore.
Or maybe not.
I really can't disagree with you guys too much, only in the sense that about the boring part. However, I will say, but the thing is, if this had been the first Tarkovsky film I had seen, and after it had been lauded so much, right, and not seen any of his other movies, I would have been thinking, just like Damien, how is this considered, a
masterpiece?
Masterpiece in the sense that one of the best films ever made. And that would have been maybe, how did this happen? And I would not have been used to his long shots. His shots go on for minutes, 10 minutes, where nothing really seems to be much happening, right? And then, have you noticed that the dialogue, there's not much dialogue in these films. The film is like 3 hours long. The film is almost 3 hours long, I think. But there's very little dialogue, and you have the shot slowly, the camera's moving, or it just sits there. Like, let's say the camera's sitting on us right now, and we're just having some movement. We're not saying anything for 5 minutes, right? Then it would have been tough to do. I know friends of mine who have seen the movie, Loke here, they really love this movie. They're like the critic. They passionately love it. And they'll rewatch it and rewatch it and rewatch it. I've only seen it maybe like 2 times. But I do like it, though. But only because it's a movie I saw after seeing some of his other films. And
the only other film I'm familiar with is Solaris. Is there others you recommend?
That's the one that I first saw, was Solaris. And that one, it's Solaris, The Mirror, this film, and Sacrifice, which I think it was the last movie he made. And Sacrifice takes place it's a family drama, and nuclear war breaks out. And it's not about how they survived the war, not anything like that. But it's a family drama taking place when they hear that nuclear war has just begun. But I guess my point, what I'm trying to get at is I did like this film, but only I pretty much knew what I was in for. And I knew already by this time a little bit about Tarkovsky and how he approached it, filmmaking.
That's a big qualifier right there.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, but I knew what I was in for. Like that's what the critics should write. You'll appreciate this, but be prepared.
Yeah. Maybe it had been the first movie I had seen by him. I mean, maybe I would have seen the other ones, but I wouldn't have been as enthusiastic to see him. Unlike when I saw Solaris, which is the first movie I saw by him. And that really said, who is this guy? I think what I like about this movie, and something I've seen in these other 3 films that I saw is that, like in Monsters, is the heart of the matter. In the sense, like in Solaris, for example. I mean, Larry, David, have you seen Solaris?
No, I only saw the remake.
Okay, well, then, but basically the same. I think, Damien, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, is Solaris is a living planet, and this may be a defense mechanism that it has, is that when you fall asleep, I guess you're something in your soul, in your conscience, and that really has deeply affected you, manifests itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of the psychologist, psychiatrist here, it's his wife who had taken her own life, and she reappears, right? And it's like when we deal with things that are traumatic to us, or in a good, well, it's traumatic, but something that really affects us deeply, and we try to put it aside. We go on our daily day, we trying to think about it, but then when we go to sleep, our dreams bring that person up, bring that event up. We have no control over that, right? And then we wake up in the morning going, damn it, why did I dream that? Why? And it kind of messes you up, wrecks you for the rest of the day. And that's something that I've seen in his films, is memory and what this does. So in Solaris, this happens. Here, the zone is, the zone will grant you your greatest wish, but it has to be a sincere wish. And that's why you have that story about the porcupine, right? The porcupine had been a stalker. And we heard the story, what happens to him. He gets his wish, which is wealth. But that's not what he wished for. Initially, he wished that he'd bring back his brother. But that was not a sincere wish. It was really wealth. And then he couldn't live with it, so he took his own life. And in the mirror, you have these memories of a young man and his mother come back. And that's what I like about it. That's what, by the time I saw Stalker, I'd seen Stalker after I saw these other 3 movies. And so I already knew, what I was in for in that sense. And I saw, okay, this is what he's doing. And I really liked it. And one final thought, Tarkovsky's father was a poet, a really well-renowned poet in the Soviet Union. And Tarkovsky incorporates a lot of his father's poetry into his dialogue. I mean, into his scene. That is, I had the book of poetry here. I have 2 collections of them. This is one of them that I have. Here's one. This is one collection of poetry that I have of his father, and I have another one somewhere around here. But yeah. But otherwise,
that book has a similar cover design to Monsters. That's funny.
I hadn't thought about that. You're right.
Tarkovsky's the monster.
I'll be the monster. No, but I really can't disagree with you. I mean, people say it's absolutely boring.
Right.
I can't disagree with you on that. Absolutely not.
Well, I can see saying this is an interesting movie if you like to study Tarkovsky's movies because it plays on the same themes. Again, that doesn't make it the greatest masterpiece in the world.
No, this is not 2001. This is not Citizen Kane. This is not Casablanca.
Right. And it's not Solaris. I mean, I've watched his Solaris twice, and I liked it much better the second time when I was prepared for the long, slow approach. But it had more content to it. More stuff ultimately happens in it. So that thing with Porcupine, that is an interesting moral story, but it's all off screen.
Yep.
It's just told to us.
Yeah.
Yep.
And towards the end of the movie, we kind of get the conflicts that are going on with the two people he's guiding. But 90% of the movie, we don't. At least I didn't get anything out of what was going on with them. At the end,
I'm sorry.
Okay. This author is actually sick of fame and wants it to be more meaningful, I guess. That was my interpretation.
The relationship between Stalker and his wife, I like, and the daughter, in the sense that at the end,
I did like the daughter and wife at the end. Yes.
Yes, I like that at the end is because she says something which is from Faulkner. You know, Faulkner had this
I didn't
line,
realize that.
"Wild Palms," which is used in the film by Godard, where Jean Seberg is reading that same book, and she's talking to her lover, is it Belmondo? I guess the actor who played him, and says basically, if I had to choose between grief and nothing, I would choose grief. And what Tarkovsky did here, I mean, I don't know if he got that from Faulkner, but the woman is, her husband is what he is, but she loves her husband, and we sense that he loves her. And that's also a theme in Tarkovsky's movies, is about love. And that's why the stalker never wants to wish, and once he dreads basically making a wish of what he really wants. But in the end, if you just wish for happiness, like the woman seems to allude at the end, you can't really have happiness without knowing what sadness is. They balance each other out. And so in the sense that these two people are satisfied with themselves, while the writer and the professor, they're still searching for whatever happiness may be. But in the end, it's really love. I mean, just to come down to the main, to the heart of the matter here, is love is the thing that makes things worthwhile, and especially in this dreadful environment that they live in. I mean, everything is broken up, a lot of rain. Oh, you mentioned the rain. Rain is something Tarkovsky uses in all his films. He likes the element of water and rain in all his movies. Something he just personally likes to do, to include.
I was so afraid every time they answered that phone or turned on the light switch, they were going to get electrocuted in real life, because
Didn't think about
there was
that.
like water everywhere. And they kept like turning on the light switch and it would go zap. And I mean, like too much water in these scenes.
Oh, you know, in the extras, I don't have the extras. Do they go into what happened after the making of this film and how people became ill?
Yeah, I saw that.
You know what? I remember that from when I watched it the first time. I couldn't find it in the extras, but I did find it online. But yeah, the people were rolling around in that muck, and it was all radioactive, and they all got sick. So it's like every time they're rolling around in all that like watery wasteland, I was thinking, oh my gosh, you're getting cancer right now. Like, that really informed my viewing of this movie. I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh, but what I did get is that he made an entire movie, and I forget how many years he worked on it, and the whole print was ruined. And they went to show it, and it was like all like destroyed, and he had to redo the film from scratch. And it was a devastating experience for him because he worked on this art piece for so long, and it wasn't watchable, and they had to go in and redo it, the whole thing again. And just think about from a point of view of a creator, like you worked really a long time on, this, piece, and it's basically, not watchable, or that must have been horrible.
I think it happened in this film. I think there was different versions of this film.
Yeah, this film. Yeah,
this one.
Yeah. And the second time he had a different choreographer. I mean, cinematographer.
Mm.
So the photography may have been completely different in the original that we never get to see.
And I forgot Nostalgia. I forgot Nostalgia is the other one that I saw by him. I like Nostalgia a lot. And briefly, what that one is about a Russian man who goes to Italy. He's a poet, and he wants to do, I think, a libretto for an opera based on an actual composer from Russia who was actually a serf, but the landlords saw he was a prodigy, so they took an interest in him and sent him abroad, Italy, to study. I forget the name of the composer. It was actually a real man. So he became very famous, but then when he comes back to Russia, I don't know what happened, but he ends up hanging himself. So the poet in Nostalgia is going back to study this man, but he himself is going to a crisis himself. You see, I like that film quite a bit, and there's a scene there where he has to walk across. I think it's a a swimming pool, but there's nothing in it. There's no water in it, and I think he has a candle, and he has to walk across to the other side, hoping it won't turn off. And again, it's one of those. It seems like it's 10 minutes, and you're just watching him walk. And again, is that the first film you watch by him? It's gonna be one of those things like, what?
You're not winning your case. That sounds, yeah. Can we get back to the ideas?
Sure.
So I also really appreciated the ideas in this movie. But again, as Sleepy pointed out, these are things that are mentioned that aren't shown. And so as a filmmaker who's showing us a story, he mentions things that we have to think about, right? But it's not actually visual. And this is a visual medium, right? And for example, there's the room when they get to the heart of that house, right? That room is never shown. I think that's interesting, right? In fact, one of the people in the commentary pointed out that the only time we get a visual from the room, it's like the camera is inside of the room.
Yeah, when the water's falling.
Either pulling you in or showing like that. That's the only time you kind of get and in that sense, the camera becomes a character. There's another scene where they're going up on a car. And basically, I also want to say he likes frames. He frames everything. There's always like people inside a doorway. And it's like 10 minutes of you watching someone inside of a frame. And it happens over and over again. Anyways, when he's going up on this abandoned car, you think it's the character walking toward the car, right? But then one by one, all the other characters go in front of it. And you realize that the camera is kind of like in a horror movie where it's like creeping up on someone and watching them. And so in the sense, you get this idea of this zone being some kind of sentient entity that's kind of like watching them. I thought that was really cool. That's visual, that's storytelling, right? But then when you give the majority of the ideas in quick dialogue, and I also wanted to I would like us to go back to the source material for this, which is Roadside Picnic. I don't know if any of you have read that. But
No, I've never read the novel, no.
Because the ideas in that book are really, really cool. And, it's worth talking about because it led to this. And then, of course, one of my favorite books of all time is Annihilation. And that is a direct descendant of this movie and that original book. And I think that Jeff Vandermeer finally did it right. He did what the other two hinted at and played with, but Jeff Vandermeer finally did it justice and got it right. That's probably a bold statement, which many people wouldn't agree with. But Roadside Picnic has this idea of why the zone is there. It's like these aliens came, they stopped at our planet, they ate, they had a picnic, and they threw their garbage out before going on their way. And what we have is their alien garbage that we are trying to understand. What are these things? What powers do they have? And as humans, we can't understand what these things are and what effects they have. And the whole zone becomes this area where all these strange objects have different tolls on different people and people, and it's cordoned off because the effects of it. Now, the movie...
That sounds awesome. I mean, as a sci-fi fan, I want that story.
And you don't get that in Tarkovsky. It's kind of hinted at. I mean, that's the whole power of this. And I'm like, come on, that was such a cool idea that I think they mention it once. And that's what I said, like Jeff Vandermeer, he uses that and runs with it. It's like, it's really explained and kind of brought to the forefront. Tarkovsky kind of abandoned that idea. And I was like, I didn't like that. I wanted more of that sci-fi element from this movie, right? And
putting aside knowing it came from a science fiction movie, I might have interpreted this movie as being about some future society where everyone is mentally ill. And none of what they think is going on is actually going on. Everybody seems like there's something wrong with them in this movie, including the wife and daughter.
Yeah.
Oh, God. They're a water species. They're a water species in the future. Oh, my God. That's hilarious. but have you either of you read Annihilation or seen the
No.
movie?
I haven't seen the film either.
Those.
Because of you, I'm planning to read Annihilation, but
Oh my
it'll
gosh,
take me a
it's
while to get
so
to it.
good.
I'm a
It's
turtle as a
so
reader.
good. That book blew me away. I loved it so much.
Who wrote that book?
Jeff Vandermeer.
Okay.
And it's a trilogy.
He's a
and
writer who started to rise to
progressively
prominence in
weirder.
the 90s in sci-fi, so you may or may not have heard of him.
Who?
Yeah.
Oh,
His career started in the 90s, I was saying, and he rose to prominence towards the end of the 90s, early 2000s.
and his other books aren't as good. I mean, he nailed it in in Annihilation.
Is that with
And
Natalie Portman?
I'm sorry?
Is that the film with Natalie Portman?
Yes. And the film has its flaws. The first time I watched it, I had the problem because I compared it to the books. But the second time I watched it, I tried to watch it on its own merits, and I enjoyed it a lot more.
Okay.
So you might enjoy it more watching it without reading the book, right? Which is how I did the opposite, right? There's a lot of really cool images in the movie that you have to like hunt for it, and they did a really good job in that sense. Such a good book, such a good movie too. So Tarkovsky, like, I don't know, final thoughts on this?
Well, I want to read Roadside Picnic now. I think that's the.
You know what? I'm going to tell you that Roadside Picnic, the Tarkovsky's movie is more faithful to Roadside Picnic than Annihilation is. I thought Roadside Picnic was endurable. I read it because of its relation to Annihilation, and I didn't think it was that great of a book. But again, it was the ideas that were really cool. But the overall book itself wasn't. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to say, I think you should read it because, it spawned so many things that are important. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. But I would say it was like a 6 or 7 out of 10 for me, whereas Annihilation is a 10 out of 10.
And what was Stalker for you?
That's tough because you need qualifiers. This is how I would say it. This movie is for the art house crowd. If you are someone who doesn't like subtitles, and if you are someone who doesn't like foreign movies, and if you are someone who doesn't like art movies, you should avoid this like the plague. Okay, you are not going to enjoy this. But if you are someone who's in the mood for a movie that's going to take you places and give you time to linger and look at scenery and give you time to think about ideas, I say that this would be a 10 out of 10 because this movie is so influential for so many reasons. The music is beautiful. The cinematography is beautiful. And if you actually surrender yourself to going through all these scenes one by one, you really do have to be in the right state of mind, right? But I'm going to say, like, if you're not, this is going to be tedious for you. Yeah. But as a piece of art, this is deserving of its accolades. It's gorgeous, and I think it's influential in so many important ways. But the average viewer, like me, is going to be bored silly watching this. So I've got to give this a big, be careful with this movie. This is an important film. I think it does a lot of really cool things, but the average viewer is just going to not watch it or turn it off. Yeah. So I don't know. It's either 0 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. So why don't you go in the middle and give it a 5? That's my ultimate review. I don't know. There's no other way to say it. I think it's such an important movie. It's so many people say that this is so good. And when I watch it, like, for example, when they're going along on the train, or when they're in the little car and they're trying to go behind the train with the barbed wire. I mean, there's so many beautiful scenes. There's another scene where the guy rolls around in the grass and he's just like, you just watch him like become part of this zone. And then there's this little inchworm that like moves along his finger. And we watched this inchworm. That wasn't supposed to be there, but it's just like, it's part of the environment. Like they're getting grimy, they're getting wet, they're all like into this, and every time I see it, I see that bug crawling across his finger. But it's important because it's like he's surrendering himself to the environment, right?
Mhm.
And when they go into that house and there's all these like weird sand dunes, that is beautiful. And for all the really weird framing devices in this movie, I kind of was getting into it. It's a visual movie, right? And you gotta kind of surrender yourself to it, but it is hard to watch because it can be so boring. There you go. It's a divisive movie, I think.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the other side of the division.
The 0 out of
I as
beautiful
an
music.
art movie, as just an art movie, because I've seen a lot of art movies in my day, I would give it 3 stars
Oh,
for the last half hour. I liked
Okay.
the last half hour.
yeah.
As a science fiction movie, 0 stars. The first time I went to see it, it was sold to me as one of the greatest science fiction movies ever made. Like that was the
Yeah, no. It's 100% experimental art film.
Yeah.
That is, I believe, very influential to like decades of art films. Because
Decades
of this
of every
movie,
bad art school.
we've got all these
student.
horrible other art movies to suffer through because of this movie. But it's the original, right? It's this
I can film a leaf covered in water while I read some poetry I wrote last night, and that will be cinema.
Yeah, but are you going to get cancer doing that? Oh, Lord.
Yes, the cancer makes it a good film.
Gore, you get to have the final thoughts because this is your baby. You love this movie. Visual poetry, you called it.
I think his movies in general are like that. I think he does go for that. And but Davian is right. You want to film a leaf for 10 minutes, and but I think with him it works for me generally, but his movies tend to deal with spiritual crisis, and it's one of those things. Criticisms about Russian fiction, like Dostoevsky and such, is like, oh man, that stuff is just way too dense.
But you're so bored by the time you get to it.
Right, he goes way too deep, and if you don't like those kind of stories, and even though you pretty well read, you like all kinds of stuff, he does do that he really does push the viewer because he's making movies for himself. He himself has said this, and he knows there's an audience for his movies, but he knows the audience is not going to be a very big audience. Even people who appreciate movies like this appreciate these sort of deep thinking, philosophy, and poetry, but he's not really going for them. It's like T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, right? The Wasteland is, breaks a lot of rules in poetry, but it's really going to be just for a few people who goes, I love poetry, but The Wasteland, I don't know what the hell he was doing.
I was giving you the final thoughts, but I want to jump in because you're saying this movie is all about deep thoughts and philosophical ideas, but I'm saying this movie is all about the visuals. And
nobody does that.
The reason that you're philosophizing is that you've got the time to sit there and try to build things from the visuals.
That's where those frames come in, though, because he'll say these things, and then you have 10 minutes to really think about them.
But it's what you're bringing to the movie rather than what's in the movie.
No, he himself has said this. Tarkovsky has said this. He has said this. Once he's done with the movie, he's done with it. He doesn't think about it at all. And the viewer then can do what he or she wants with it. And so he acknowledges that. And this is exactly what we've done. I like the film. I'm more in the middle with the two of you. I mean, the fact that it has 100% approval. I mean, Solaris probably has that. I'm thinking, why not? And I don't recommend the film. I rarely ever recommended the movie to anybody because I know it's going to be, if I say, watch Solaris. If you like Solaris, then give it the other movies a shot. But if you do not like Solaris, you're not going to like anything else by it. That's what I think.
Yeah.
But I think he's really good on the spiritual crisis, emotional crisis. What's the meaning of humanity? What's the purpose of it all? And I think the visuals go with that. I think quite well.
Yeah. yeah, like I said, I think as a visual piece, that's where its strengths are. The music is gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's just when you say this is a movie about philosophy, that's where I'm like, huh? Because the ideas put forth in the book are, brought more into the light than they are in this movie. But anyways, as a visual piece, I think that this is something that filmmakers can study and learn from.
Yeah, check out The Mirror. The Mirror is just beautiful. How he does what he does there in The Mirror. I think it's on YouTube.
Yeah, I actually haven't watched any, and I'm kicking myself because I really wanted to watch Solaris so that I could have that to bring into the conversation, but I didn't get around to it.
Maybe Gore sees the philosophy in this movie because he's watched it more times. The text of the dialogue is a bit dense, and it would take a while to interpret.
Unpack.
Yeah.
So you may have the dialogue may have washed over you, and you were focused on the visuals.
Yeah. Washed is a good word because there's certainly a lot of water in this movie. It's like so much water.
I'm impressed by the actor's ability to lay in water for so much time.
Roll around laying. Well, at least
because anything you see on a film, right? The actor has probably been doing it for hours,
probably
weeks. Yeah. Yeah, and then they got to the dust pile and they got to dry off a little bit. Rolling in the dust. Okay. I want to thank you both for a great conversation about Stalker.
Oh, thank you.
We got three totally different, well, not totally different, but we got three, widely different opinions about the same movie. So that's really interesting.
Before we go though, Damien, did you read Monsters, Damien?
I never finished it.
Okay.
It was so intense that I put it aside.
I see.
Okay. And then I didn't get back to it. And then I thought with David doing it, I would get back to it. But then my week got really busy.
Okay.
Well, busy is a relative word. But anyway, things distracted me and I didn't get around to it.
Okay.
I actually think the beginning is better. So you got the best part.
I planned to get back to it. I remember when it first came out, I remember Rasa and Terrence were just crazy about it. They loved it so much. So I felt a little guilty for being a little less into it than that.
Okay.
But the art is magnificent and I can feel Barry Smith's intensity. That's what makes me think he went through some kind of childhood experience that in some way is reflective of this.
Maybe, yeah.
All right. Well,
okay. Thanks for having me on. I'll watch from behind the scenes.
Yeah, I have to go as well.
Do you want to stay for Arabian Nights?
I have to actually take off, but in a few minutes. But yeah, you can start. I want to hear your thoughts on Arabian Nights. I've only read a handful of them though.
Okay, so I actually wrote down a couple of things that I just want to say, and one, where was it? I can't find it. Basically, there were things that kept being repeated in the book. For example, I don't know how to approach this delicately, but one of the repeated ideas. First of all, it's great. I love it.
A handful of I like it a lot.
Yeah. I was bad. I only got to 250 pages.
Is that the complete? Is that everything? Is that everything?
No, this is one of three.
Oh my God!
This is part one.
Okay.
And it's almost 1,000 pages. I actually ordered part two. I am going to read this. But here's the thing. I was making myself read for a couple of hours each morning.
Yeah.
And I never got bored. This book is really, really good. It's basically you're just reading story after story after story, right? It's just wonderful stories that transport you. You get all these different cast of characters, and it's like how they talk about how Shakespeare can touch on every aspect of humanity. Well, you get that in these stories.
That's my understanding of that book. Yeah.
Yeah. And even though I kind of failed because my goal was to get through at least this, I didn't, because I think that within 250 pages, I got the idea of what this is going to be like throughout the whole the whole thing, the scope of it. Yeah. I'm definitely going to keep reading it. I'm going to try to read at least 1 or 2 days every day, from now on. I only made it to night 33. Like I'm starting night 34 out of 1,001, and I spent so many hours reading. I was averaging for every hour that I read 20 to 25 pages. So if you want to read this, this is going to be a huge time investment.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, like the pages, they are, can you see that? Like they are jam-packed. Like you are reading wall-to-wall text. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that this is going to be a time investment that is so worth your time.
I have some volumes. No, I have an abridged version, which what you have of Burton's translation.
Yes.
And then I have
Malcolm
one volume
Lyons
of a massive Burton translation.
Yeah, this one is Malcolm Lyons.
Oh, it's not Burton's translation. Okay.
Yeah, so I believe it's more updated.
Okay.
Now, what I was getting to is that you're going to come across some repeated themes. And the first one that kind of hits you in the face is slaves. And the first thing that, I don't know how to put it delicately, but I'm just going to put it the way they do in the book. Black slaves. Every time they say the word slave, they introduce it with black slaves.
Okay.
And it made me think, okay, this is cultural, right? And it wasn't changed in all the translations because it seems like there was a hierarchy of slaves and that the lowest hierarchy for a woman to be violated or to have sex would be a black slave.
That's right.
And they just kept repeating it over and over again. And it's like, because that's what starts the whole thing. It's like the wife is part of a harem and she starts having sex with a black slave. I'm not going to say black anymore, but that's the way it's repeatedly stated in the book. And it's to give this idea. It's like, oh, it's not just a slave, but it was a black slave to make it even worse. And so as I'm reading this, I'm just like, oh my goodness. But anyways, they didn't change it or update it. And this happens repeatedly throughout the text.
No, it doesn't bother me. For me, for those type of things, I like the accurate how it was.
Yep.
I don't like for them to mess with any of that because I think we're all adults here.
Yep.
Well, and we all have we already know what's right, what's wrong, and the one idiot who's going to read it who really believes the sort of thing, that's going to be somebody marginal. But we're not going to change it for that idiot. Because if you change it marginally, the idiot's going to say, no, they were really black. Why did they change that?
Yeah.
So
I think the original language must say that word repeatedly.
I think so. I think probably so.
It's just, it's funny from a cultural aspect, right? Because you're getting a window into the culture and the ideas and this hierarchy. Like as soon as I read that, I was like, oh, there must be more types of slaves than black slaves. And there must be like a hierarchy, like the worst kind of violator must be, you know what I mean? It's like it brought all these cultural ideas into the text for me that aren't stated. And I'm wondering am I really interpreting this correctly? Now that's just one of the things. Like you're going to come across hunchbacks. Hunchbacks got it the worst. They're always portrayed as evil or buffoons that need to be punished. It's like pretty bad. It's like as soon as you see a hunchback, you're like, oh no.
Yeah. What century were these stories? Do they think these stories were composed in? What century were these in?
I guess they were oral tales that were told over time that were compiled. Right. And you're catching me off guard, but I want to say around the Middle Ages, but I don't know exactly, but
that's why the context of these things. This was back then and the where it was, and so. But I do know there were oral stories, and I think it's really cool that this woman's telling these stories because she wants to keep her head.
Yep.
Because all the other women, he makes love to them, and the next day he kills them, and this woman says, "I'm going to keep him interested." And each story was a cliffhanger. And so he can't kill me. He has to know it's going to continue. And I think that's actually fabulous. That's my understanding of what's going on here. I know Borges loved these stories, Jorge Luis Borges, but he didn't like the Burton translation. I I forget. He liked the one by. Was there a translator named Lane, Lane?
That I don't know.
I think that's the one that he liked. But he and in my readings of Borges and his admiration for the thing. So, but I just thought it was really fascinating about the woman, this endless storytelling to keep her head. It's my understanding that by the end of it all, he manages to make the Sultan change his ways and go, I was kind of a bad man. I'm not going to execute any more of my wives.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding at the end, that's what actually happens. So they're like morality tales in the end about humanity's, all the things that we do that are bad. But at the end, you go through all this and you see the light, so to speak. I think that's how it concludes. I think. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a framing device for this. This is a very common medieval thing. Like we see it in so many like novels, like the Decameron and whatever. Like where you have story after story after story. A lot of French.
Also Canterbury Tales too. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So you've got this framing device built around. Well, I'm gonna end the night on a cliffhanger, so that you have to keep me alive. And so with that in mind, I was looking at the end of every story, like where she's happening. I'm like, well, that's not a very exciting ending. I don't know how that's going to keep me alive. Like I kept saying that to myself. I mean,
also her head. You would have chopped off her head if you would have said
because there's even a couple stories where they get very convoluted. You'll have 5 characters, and each character has to tell their own story. And that person will have 3 or 4 characters who tell their own story. And then they go back to the original and go on to the second one. And that person will tell this story. And there's this one where they're like, they're like criminals. And they're like, if I tell you a story that's better than the other character, will you keep me alive and not kill me? And then they'll get to the end of the story and they're like, that story wasn't as good. You die. And then the next guy says, wait, if my story is better, will you keep the other people alive? But it's funny because I would be like that person. Like that story wasn't going to keep you alive. You die. But it was kind of funny. I don't know if the cliffhangers were really cliffhangers that were good enough to keep her alive for 1,000 days.
No, but I think to your point is the stories are so compelling in themselves. And I think the Sultan maybe if the cliffhanger wasn't one that would have kept her alive, but he's so engaged in her storytelling is that, I'll wait till morning to hear another story.
So Sleepy has a question for you. How much was Richard Burton's interpretation? Do you mean like how much money? How much did it cost? I don't exactly know what you mean.
Translated it all. The ones that I have, the thing what made his notorious is that he includes the sex in his. He includes all these things which were, when there was another translator that did it, an English translator, he cut all those things out. But Burton included everything in the stories.
I think this one does too. There's like mentions of, let's just say there's some sex in this book. Yeah. So it's there.
Burton. But of course, Burton translated also a lot of sexual texts from that era, from that period. And the thing about Burton, he was married. His wife was a strong Catholic, which I think one day I'm gonna have to read a biography about him to see the dynamics of this, because I think she was a little bit disturbed because he did all these travels, and then when he settled in, he started to do all these things, and he married a very nice and proper woman, and also a Christian woman. And I wonder what she thought of all these things, his adventures that he had, his real life adventures that he had when he settled in. And so eventually, I'm going to have to read a biography about him because he seems like a fascinating man who did literally everything. And
I think that that Richard Burton, I keep thinking of the actor when I say that. But Richard Burton is probably so important because his translation became the one that many English speakers read, right? And this became so hugely influential. Whether it's the best,
I like him. He's a wonderful writer. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he's so important for having translated this and bringing this to the English-speaking masses. So yeah, so important. And I probably have read translations of Richard Burton's Arabian Nights, because I've read, certain stories before I did this, and I'm sure, those are the ones that they're based on and what have you. So yeah, but I didn't read his version. I was reading this Penguin, and I don't know much about the different translations. I just got this from Penguin and I started reading it. So I can't tell you which one is better than the other. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm definitely got nowhere near through this. I was a little bit ashamed, but then at the same time, I thought to myself, if you rush through this, if you actually devote all the time to getting through this, you're basically rushing through this wonderful art piece. And this is something that you should savor, because every story, and they're very different. You've got comedies, you've got tragedies, you've got they're not like 1,000 of the same stories written by the same writer. These are all stories that are gathered from basic different cultures and then put into this. So you're actually reading basically a bunch of different writers, even though it was written by the same person, kind of thing. More like a compiler than than an actual writer.
That's about right, especially since it's probably many people who told these stories, and then somebody decided to write them down because they were all just passed down. So
Morton wrote that a lot of the stories came from India, and then they were translated into Persian in the 500 AD, and then into Arabic in the 750s. So, and I'm sure
right.
added throughout time.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Yeah,
it's quite amazing what survived. It is absolutely amazing. Whenever I see stuff like this, like in the Greek tragedies, like for example, I think it was either Euripides or Sophocles, born to like 19 plays, but it was suggested he actually had like 100. He actually composed, but only 19 or so survived.
So many things lost.
It's quite amazing how just those people, right, and then all the other people who didn't, whose work didn't survive. But we're so richer by what we do have. But it's just one of those things of what humanity did thousands of years ago that just are not here to this day.
Well, look at modern culture. We are very film oriented in our culture, and look at how many movies have not survived. All of the TV that was produced in the 50s and 60s, recorded over, gone, unless someone actually recorded it on videotape. And so many films that have not even been put onto VHS tape, that weren't put on the DVDs, that weren't put on the Blu-rays. Like, we're only scratching the surface of what's available. And so many of these works are just lost to us. I love Dark Shadows, and there's so many episodes that are just gone. It's like, and that's like it became popular, a really popular TV show, but there's a whole bunch of missing episodes. They're just gone. So anyways, nothing new, right? And we actually have the ability to save these things now, and we're still losing art left and right.
That's true.
What is this? Many tapes got wiped. Yep. They were deemed more valuable than the content. Yep, that is true. Right. I'm guilty of that myself. I would record over tapes all the time, and I recorded things from radio, and who knows? I'm not saying that what I recorded, I was a kid, what I was recording wasn't important, but I would record over things, and it was just the way that we did, because it was a disposable medium, right? I had a tape. I only had one. I wanted to record something. I would record over something else. And yeah, kind of sad there. When you think of it now, right, even with a phone, we used to have a camera that we would have to buy individual cartridges for, and we could take a limited amount of pictures, and I would have 24, and no matter what I took, that's what I had. But now I could take thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pictures. I don't have to worry about the quality.
You have to make that picture count.
Yeah. And so it's a totally different way of interacting and dealing with things, right? And we wouldn't know what they looked like until weeks later, right? Because we would have to take them in to get developed. right? It's just a totally
And to
different.
your point, back to Tarkovsky, is that he had a limited amount of budget and limited amount of film.
Yep.
And so when, like you said about how he framed things so beautifully, he had to think that through and film it and think, okay, if I don't get this right, I'm not going to have any more film to make. And I think that era of that's just him, but any filmmaker, right, who
Yep.
initially had limited budget and was doing these movies, what they were able to do, and because if they messed it up, too bad, too sad.
And he actually did mess it up.
Yeah.
Right. He filmed an entire film that was unwatchable. That was I don't, what do you say? Unproducible? I don't know. Like there was something when they were like making the film. They used to, what was that called when you had to like make the film in the dark room? What's that process called?
I don't know. I remember.
But you know, they basically had to, you know, get the film, and they messed it up. Something went wrong, and he lost years of work. They had to start it over again. And think, like I mentioned before, like how devastating that would be for an artist to have to go through that. But he had to pick himself back up and do it again.
I have to say, you had some interesting choices. I mean, I listened to some of the Marcellus music, and you really, this is quite. There was nothing weak in these 4 books. All of them are very strong. The music is strong. The film is strong. The graphic novel, and this is strong. This is like heavy stuff. What I mean by that is heavy is
March of the Mammoths.
You know, it is Mammoth. You know, and I like that. I mean, there was nothing weak in any of these things. I mean, they all have their own. You know, they're on their own hierarchy. One can disagree if they should be up there or not, but I think a lot of people think, you know, there's not a weak point in any of these. I think
that was a perfect segue into what we're doing next month, which is we're gonna go
Dumb and Dumber now. Are we gonna go there? Dumb and Dumber.
We're gonna go to the side of we just had everyone. We're gonna go to the frivolity. So
what do you do for next month?
So first off, we are going to go with graphic novel The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. This is the Ominous Omnibus Scary Tales and Scary Tentacles, Volume 1. Now, you don't have to buy this. This is available in, what do you call them? Graphic novel form, like a couple of them. You don't have to buy the whole thing. But as an art piece, this thing is gorgeous. Right?
You know,
this is available.
Well regarded. I've never read them, but I know the comics are well regarded.
Yeah, so I bought both of these after watching a YouTube video. And I was like, I've never read any Simpsons comics, and I thought I need to like get into this art because when they were showing it, it's so gorgeous, and you've got this oversized format. So there you go. But what I'm trying to say is that you don't have to invest in this if you don't want to. It's online, and also a lot of this is put out in smaller graphic novel form, so you could just buy one of them if you want to. So there you have it, The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, Volume 1. I also have Volume 2, which I'm going to try to read this month. For recordings, this one is coming out of left field. This is called Kirby Crackle. The group is called Kirby Crackle.
Oh, okay.
And I have 2. This is very obscure. I went to a comic book shop, and these people were signing and like getting people to buy their stuff. Yeah. I think they're local musicians, but it is available on Spotify, and they sing about comic books. Now, I'm not going to say that this is the greatest music ever made.
Sounds like fun,
but it's fun.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, they're total. It's all about being a geek. It's all about collecting comics. Every song is about comic books and geek culture. Like I said, they're available on Spotify. And I thought to myself, why not like encourage this, indie low budget artist that I saw at, a local store. And so we're going to go ahead. And again, the name of the group is called Kirby Crackle with 2 Ks. Okay, that's the music. They actually have like 4 or 5 CDs out. The movie is What We Do in the Shadows. So right now I am watching the show, and this movie is hilarious, and the TV show is equally good. And I love when TV shows can take a movie and run with it and do it right. But then it always brings me back to the original. And this movie is so funny, but it's out of print and it's not available digitally, I think. I mean, you can buy it, on Apple or Amazon. You can buy it like to stream it. I think you have to pay $3 to $5 for it. But I went on eBay and I got a copy, and I think I paid $9 for it. I mean, it is available. But this movie is so much fun, and it's hilarious. It's about a group of vampires from different eras all living together in the same house.
It's the real world.
It's hilarious. And the show is really good too. Okay, so the book. We're going Stephen King with The Colorado Kid. I actually have two versions of this.
I approve of the covers.
I love these vintage. So they made this look like a vintage paperback, right? And I'm really into these vintage paperbacks right now. And this is called Hard Case Crime. It's a company that has been putting out their own, but also reprinting older books. And I'm trying to get into them. And I figured that this would be a good way to read. These are readily available. Actually, I think Stephen King has put out 2 or 3 books in this series. And like I said, there are two copies of this. Is the same book, just 2 different versions. And if you get this one, I think it actually has pictures, and the pictures are done by different artists inside. Now, it does say it's lavishly illustrated. I'm not going to go that far and say this is lavishly illustrated.
No, we're comic people. That's not lavish.
Yeah. So I kind of went to the little like frivolous side for next month, just because
I don't think so.
Heavy month.
They're not frivolous, but they're not certainly as
weighty.
As weighty as the stuff we've done here. I mean, and so not at all. So I think it's a pretty interesting. I like that. It's a nice variety.
So that's what's up for next month. We got a couple of comments. Let's go ahead and read them. Who needs cinematographers when today's directors don't have to worry about running out of film? I disagree. Well, as it turns out, good. The art needs it. What do directors know from framing a shot? So I just did an overview of the Academy Award movies, and so much of the experience of enjoying these films was based on the cinematography. And I'm going to be honest with you. It really does make a huge difference to the enjoyment of a film, in my opinion. I'm sure you agree with that, Gore.
Oppenheimer, the cinematography was beautiful.
Oh, yes. And the music.
Yeah.
Wow. Did we mention the music in Tarkovsky's movie? That music was good.
His music is good in his films.
Yeah,
he does. He does that in all his films. Yeah,
very eerie, very compelling music.
Check out the opening to Nostalgia. It's on YouTube. If you go to Nostalgia, it has the opening shot and it has the music. I forget who the composer is.
Yeah,
and it's a beautiful black and white sequence, and basically that's definitely poetry on screen. It's like you just type in YouTube Nostalgia, you'll see a woman profile. And then you'll watch the first 4 minutes of the film with the music. It's quite good.
It's the same shot for 4 minutes.
It's a long shot.
I'm joking.
It's a long shot, but it's very engaging. I watch it all the time. I watch it. I'm just mesmerized by it.
Okay, there you go. Gore recommends the first 4 minutes of the same long opening shot by Tarkovsky. No, I'll check it out. Thank you. So Paolo says, I never cared about music inspired by geek culture, but French house music group Cassius used to have a superhero self-image based on the DC character.
That's pretty cool. Thank you.
Okay. Paolo, you probably won't enjoy the CDs that I'm going to say that when I listen to these, it's kind of a spoiler. Like a little bit goes a long way, but I just wanted to do some kind of like fun kind of geek culture. So I picked this. So I'm probably not going to change your mind, Paolo. I don't think that you're really going to like these based on what your comment states. But I'd like to find the character that is for the French group Cassius. And then Very true, David. Of course, I say really good things, Morton. So, Gore, I want to thank you for joining me. Do you have any last comments that you want to say?
No, not at all. I guess on a book note, I guess I recommend. You probably heard about the Garcia Marquez book, right?
En agosto nos vemos. We'll see in August. Is that what it says?
Yeah, just came out a couple of weeks ago. This is the novel that he wrote, the last novel that he wrote, and his family decided to publish it, even though he did not want it published.
Wow.
So it's posthumous work. So there's been some debate. I've been watching some interviews with people about it who are not happy that his family went against his wishes. But there's been also debate as to what's happened to him at the end of his life. This manuscript, well, his work is here in Texas. They're at the Harry Ransom Center at the University of Texas in Austin, which has manuscripts of James Joyce. It's quite remarkable what we have here in Texas of major literature is at UT. But this little novella, it's a novella, and it's about a woman who's 46 years old, and she goes to, this is the premise of it, I don't give anything away, she goes to the island to visit, to visit her mom's grave every year. And but she takes a lover each New Year's she goes, and then that's basically the premise of it. And so, it's been translated into English as well. And but again, there's some debate as to he wanted some people say he wanted the manuscript destroyed. Others say that's not the case. And so, in any event, but for me, I liked it, and I like Marquez, Garcia Marquez, and it's a good novella. It's not one of his major works, obviously, but it's good. So
yeah, one of my best friends, she loves his work, and I'm surprised she hasn't mentioned it to me because I'm so out of it when it comes to new things. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. I would like to read that.
Yeah, it's on Amazon right now. Again, it was translated in English. It came out at the same time. It's a huge, bestseller at this point all over the world. So because of this, and some of the reactions have been good. The ones that have been negative on the Spanish language YouTube, commentators, journalists and other people who are saying it's a terrible work, never should have been published. Before we go,
why can't they take it with a grain of salt that it's a posthumous work that was never finalized by the author and leave it at that?
Spanish language from Spain, Latin America, and Mexico critics, they're not as nice as English speaking critics. They'll get up there and they'll say brutal stuff, and cruel stuff sometimes. It's quite interesting to watch these people in action, and also vehement, defending them. They get really passionate about it in a way that it's rare that you'll see English speakers. You think the actual Gore Vidal is harsh on people? Not at all. Or Norman Mailer, how Norman Mailer would just trash people he didn't like. This is another level how they get on these things, and so it's just
but this is not a novel in the normal sense, right? This is an unfinished work that was published, and he never got the chance. But when you have an important writer like this, you want everything because it shows his career and his development, and you can understand that this isn't the finished product, but it's important. Right. So I don't understand the criticism of that. But maybe it shouldn't have been. But I mean, to tear it apart and say this is trash, blah, blah, blah. It is what it is, right? He didn't have the chance to finish it. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's harsh because they kept saying, it's. But some have even gone as far as to say the last great book that he did was 100 Years of Solitude. And they say, and Love in the Time of Cholera was a poor book. And all these things, they get pretty harsh. It's just fascinating to watch. Anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah. So,
but thank you for having me. It's always good talking to you, David, and I'm glad I could be on. I wasn't going to be home today, but I ended up being home, and so I'm about to take off now. But I'm glad I was able to stay.
Thank you so much. You really enriched the conversation, and I'm going to say goodbye to everyone until next month, and thank you for stopping in. Bye, Gore.
Adios.